Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to Ramacrow. It's time for another voicemail. Today's voicemail is from Art. Let's listen to what Art has to say.
Hello, Lloyd. My name is Art. I'm in Canada, and you can certainly use this if you wish, period. So my sister has been a Jehovah Witness for most of her life, and she's now in her late 60s. And I was thinking, as I was looking through some old Watchtower literature, and the fact that you can actually buy some of them on eBay, is there a convincing piece of literature from the past that if I sent her, let's say, as a gift, that she probably had never seen before, and if she opened it, would it open her eyes as well? I know that you have a lot of the literature there, and you've read a lot of it, so yeah, that's about it. She is very much indoctrinated. She risked the life of one of her sons way back. He did survive, which I think just instilled the belief even more. And I love her dearly, but I don't love the organization, and I don't like the fact that my sister is supporting such an organization. So thank you very much, and thank you for all the work you do. You're helping so many people. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. That was a really interesting message, and I really do empathize with your situation. It's heartbreaking, isn't it, when we have loved ones, relatives, close relatives, who are under the thrall of an abusive cult, which is what Jehovah's Witnesses are. And so I think the fact that you're leaving this message and asking this question shows that you care very much about your sister and love your sister very much. And yeah, I think that says a lot about you as a person, and the fact that you're not just content to sit back and watch people waste their lives in a cult. You want to do something about it, and kudos for that. That's something that I can relate to and kind of feel passionately about with my work. With your question, is there something that would make your sister open her eyes? Let's say in old Watchtower literature. I have to say, probably not. I think this is one of those voicemails where ultimately it comes down to you managing your expectations. We're talking about another human being's brain and what's going on in it, inside that brain, and deeply, profoundly held beliefs that have only been solidified over the course of time by what's called the sunk cost fallacy, which I've spoken about many times on the channel. The more you invest in a lie, the more you need it to be true. Is the best way of putting it. Hey, I should TM that, shouldn't I? But that's how it works. Add in the fact that your sister risked her son's life. I can only assume due to the blood teaching, but I don't know. You didn't give the details there, but that only adds to the sunk cost fallacy. That gives her only yet more reason to stick it out. Because if she wakes up in her 60s, late 60s, as you say, so she's approaching her 70s, and if she wakes up at this point, not only does she have to confront the fact that she has wasted probably the majority of her life in something that isn't true, wasted all of that time, and she has to confront the fact that she did the last thing that any mother should do, which is risk their child's life. She needs to live with that. Now, that's not to say that it's impossible for people to wake up from the organization when they are at that advanced age. I've spoken before on the channel about how, we really shouldn't second guess the situation. Who's to say that someone in their 60s, 70s, 80s might not relish having at least the final few months, years, days, whatever, to themselves, to be able to think for themselves and not have their lives micromanaged, Maybe your sister would wake up if the right information were to find its way to her. But I would submit that it's not usually how it works. Usually, and I'm speaking purely from the point of view of someone who's been doing this now for 10 years and has listened to many stories of other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and how their loved ones came to wake up. It tends to be that people start the journey for themselves. It could be that someone's husband or wife leaves, and that will make it more likely that they might leave because it's a different dynamic in a husband and wife relationship, isn't it? There's more reason, I think, to grasp what's going on in your partner's mind and try to reconcile. But when we're talking about your sister, I don't think there's as much pulling power, if I'm being completely honest, that you personally have in helping her to deprogram. So if you take nothing else away from my reply to this voicemail, just try, if you can, to manage your expectations and assume the position that your sister is going to go to her grave as a believing Jehovah's Witness. I think that is the most likely outcome here. All of that said, you have asked an intriguing question, which is, of all of the old publications that the organization makes it hard for Jehovah's Witnesses to read, if not impossible, what would be the publication to maybe buy on eBay and send to your sister and say, hey, this isn't apostate literature. This is published by the faithful slave. I'm sending you some spiritual food. Part of your spiritual heritage is how they phrase it. So here's a part of your spiritual heritage. Check out what it says on this page. If I were to choose the most incriminating book that has ever been published by Jehovah's Witnesses, without question for me, it's got to be a yearbook, and it's the 1934 yearbook. Good luck trying to find it, by the way, because the yearbooks only started to be printed in 1927. So we're talking way, way back in the history of the organization as far as yearbooks are concerned. And the 1934 yearbook is hard to get, not just because it's from the 1930s, but also because of how incriminating it is. It's a book that's in demand. I'm going to beseech Tibor to be gracious and show a thumbnail to a video where I discuss the 1934 yearbook in more detail. It's a much older video, so apologies in advance. The production values will be nowhere near what they are now. But if you want more information on what's inside the 1934 yearbook, and specifically the Declaration of Facts penned by Joseph Franklin Rutherford, who, let's remember, was the Watchtower president in 1919 when the organization was supposedly chosen by Jesus as the faithful and discreet slave. Here's my copy. Now, when I did my video on the 1934 yearbook, I didn't own this. What happened was, and I feel just by way of a thank you, it would be nice to just tell this story briefly. One of my viewers is a collector of old Watchtower publications, and she managed to get hold of a 1934 yearbook, and she actually lent it to me for that video. So she lent me the yearbook, and I did the video, and then I wrapped it in bubble wrap or whatever, and I sent it back to her. And then sometime later, she said, guess what? I've managed to find another one on eBay. This one's yours. So I was so thrilled when I had my own copy that this viewer very, very generously donated, because I've just been on eBay just before I came and did this video. I can't see one on eBay. So it's one of those where it's so rare that you have to kind of just periodically check eBay to see if there's one up for grabs. And I guarantee you it's going to be in the hundreds of dollars. So that's how hard it is to get hold of one of these. Your best bet, actually, the easiest way to do it is to just send a link. But I realize what you want to do is kind of send a present, don't you, that someone can actually open, and there can be the mystery of, ooh, what's inside here. Let's, for argument's sake, say that you managed to obtain on eBay or elsewhere a 1934 yearbook of Jehovah's Witnesses. So what you could do is you could send it to your sister, and you could say, I'm gifting you this publication from the faithful and discreet slave circa 1934. Why don't you take a look at page 132? So if she then opens the book at page 132, here's what she'll see, and I don't know whether it's going to pick up on the camera. I'll try and hold it as close to the camera as possible. But there's a heading there on the left-hand side, and the heading simply says Jews. You can see where this is going. So it's the 1930s, and Rutherford is writing a document called the Declaration of Facts, which he's so proud of that he's having it printed in one of the organization's yearbooks. And in the 1930s, he's writing a document addressed to the government of Germany of the 1930s, in which he is essentially trying to impress them that Jehovah's Witnesses are more or less on the same page. That's what the Declaration of Facts is. You don't need to persecute us. You don't need to shut us down. We pose no threat to you, because actually we kind of agree with you. That's what the Declaration of Facts is. And again, my video goes into this in way more detail, but just to give you a flavor of what it says on Jews, on page 134, it says, the greatest and the most oppressive empire on earth is the Anglo-American Empire. This was in the 1930s. The Anglo-American Empire was the greatest and most oppressive empire on earth. That's how in touch Joseph Rutherford was. By that is meant the British Empire, of which the United States of America forms a part. Who knew the USA was part of Britain? Rutherford didn't even have basic geography, did he? It has been, quote continues, the commercial Jews of the British American Empire that have built up and carried on big business as a means of exploiting and oppressing the peoples of many nations. This fact particularly applies to the cities of London and New York, the stronghold of big business. This fact is so manifest in America that there is a proverb concerning the city of New York which says, "The Jews own it, the Irish Catholics rule it, and the Americans pay the bills." That's what Rutherford, one of a number of things that Rutherford had to say about Jews in the 1930s. I don't think you can top that, to be honest, in the context of what happened next, in terms of what Nazi Germany did to the Jews, killing 6 million of them, due to the anti-Semitic hatred that they fostered, that they stirred up in Europe and elsewhere. And it was an anti-Semitic hatred that Joseph Rutherford subscribed to, as is very clearly obvious when you read the Declaration of Facts. So that answers your question of what's the worst historical Watchtower publication, but I'm afraid your chances of getting it are slim to say the least. But again, please do consider just re-examining the likelihood of your sister waking up, given how indoctrinated you know she is. But that's all I have to say on this particular voicemail. If you would like to leave a voicemail, the thing to do is go to speakpipe.com/Cedars, remembering to indicate clearly if you don't want me to play your voicemail on this channel. But that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for watching.